Oh my God, episode 16. We are so excited to record again. It has been so long.
We have so much to catch you guys up on, fill you guys up on, why we took a break, everything
Life updates.
life updates, everything that's been going on in between, and how we suddenly have become roommates at
I know,
30
right?
something
That's
years
an
old.
interesting story. And we actually have a guest on today.
First time ever.
I know, we've never had a guest on our show before. We have Mackenzie on. We'll tell you guys about her after we
catch you guys up
catch
on
you guys up
everything
on our
that's been
life.
going on.
So for those that are here for the first time, I am Bianca and I'm a work-at-home mom to 2 little girls.
And I'm Crystal. I'm a stay-at-home mom to 2 littles, and this is the Messy Buns Coffee Runs podcast.
This is a no bullshit girl talk through all things mamahood and lifestyle, where there's a place for everyone. So life update, Crystal, where the hell have you been?
Oh my God. Okay. So wait, before we even get into me, I think we need to start off and tell everybody why we paused.
Yeah, no,
why we needed to pause. So let's talk a little bit about
We should bring it back to the beginning.
Yeah, bring it back to the beginning. Talk about your Gobi.
So I got sick back in January and we had such a good momentum going. And then after I got sick, it was just doctor's appointments after doctor's appointments. And we found it hard to find time to record. And I think we recorded one time and we bulk recorded, which is why we had like 3 or 4 episodes after I was sick. Okay. So Crystal, tell us what happened after all of that.
So after all of that, we had bulk recorded, and then I did the birthday episode, which I actually ended up doing just a few days before, but I did that one on my own.
Yeah, but the day we bulk recorded, you had your first appointment with who?
The day that we ended up bulk recording, I actually had our first appointment with our realtor. Now, this realtor that we have, her name is Marlene Rabb. If anybody wants to know, she's freaking amazing. We used her when we bought our first home. And I say that so sadly because we had decided it was time to sell the house. So actually our original goal was, I don't know if I've told you this, but like our original goal right around Christmas time when we got back from Big Bear, we had decided that, you know, if you know us, I think I touched on it a little bit about how with me and my husband about how we have like these certain life goals. So we kind of had our whole life on hold.
Oh,
like,
yeah. We did touch on this. We
about like needing
schooling.
to, the schooling. And so it's like, we want to eventually, this is not forever home. So we don't want to do too much to it because we know eventually we want to sell it. And I told you that was kind of taking a toll a little bit between us because it's like, okay, like, you know, I've reached where I'm at. I'm going to be a stay-home mom for a while. And I understand he still wants to go. So this is like the natural things of marriage, right? Yeah. So we had made the decision right after the holidays to just decide to just live our lives. Like school will come, everything will come, but we're not going to stop living and put our lives on hold in the meantime. So our original plan was to buy our forever home by the end of this year. Like we were planning on being in our forever home by the time the holidays came around. We actually had no intentions on selling our house at first.
Yeah, I remember that.
But as we started looking and like looking more of like, cause we started saving, we were able to save really fast. We were looking, we were just like, it took some convincing. Bianca basically had to call me out and tell me to stop bitching out. But we decided to move away from home. Long Beach has been my home. I've never lived anywhere other than Long Beach. Yeah. So we decided to move out a little bit more toward a little inland. And so we decided, you know what, there's no point in holding on to a house that's, you know, a little bit further out there. We're really not going to come to Long Beach unless we're visiting family or something. Yeah. So we decided to sell our house. And so we met with the realtor or that same realtor, and we sold our house, and our house sold really fast. It was crazy.
Brings us to our other point. We are now
roommates. So actually the house sold super fucking fast. That was the problem. So the house sold super, super fast. And thank goodness, like, because everybody knows how the market is right now. It's insane. So we ended up making a killing off of our house. But and thank God, our house, like our escrow went super smoothly with the people who bought the house. But we had to be out. But then that kind of left us with like the whole, oh fuck, where the fuck do we live in the meantime while we look for forever home? So Bianca's like, you can totally bum it here. Bianca's like, you can bum it at my house. And we said, okay, I guess. And sure enough, here we are. And obviously, because the housing market is so crazy, finding forever home it's taking longer than expected, which is fine. We've been here for like 3 weeks now.
So you guys are 3 weeks into the house hunting, and how many offers have you put in?
We put in 8 offers
and nothing.
We've gotten 4 counters and lost every time. It fucking sucks.
That's crazy.
Actually, what we were just talking about before was just about how we don't usually do good with living with other people, but like how well it is going here. Like
I think it helps that we're very opposite in a way. Like I'm very much like Ethan and I always out of the house.
Go. Oh
and
my
you guys
God.
like hang out at the house a little bit more. So you guys get your alone time and we get our alone time. And we also get to hang out and do like dinners together. And we've been kind of swapping dinners and stuff like that. So
it's been
like
the
the
village.
easiest thing in
or
the
even
world.
today we went to the beach all day today, just took the kids, literally just packed the kids in the car and like left 5 minutes ago to the beach. And it was amazing. It really is like a little village. So we're here searching for forever home, and we've kind of like changed our attitude about it in the sense of like, you know, it's in our favor if we need it to be, but it's nice living here, so we're not too much in a rush.
Really cool too is that the kids are all going to preschool together.
Yeah, now the kids are in freaking preschool. Ben is in preschool. What? I fucking can't believe it, man. I'd send Camila too.
You're getting old.
I know. I'd send Camila too if she was ready. I'm going to tell you, that little sliver of freedom that I've gotten, forget it.
I love it. So one more update for you guys before we get into like our main topic. We are finally, after months and months and months of fighting I think it's like the host that we use for our podcast. Finally on Apple Podcasts. It only took forever.
Jesus.
I guess there was something wrong with like the back end of it, and we were like a glitch in the system, but we are now on Apple Podcasts. So if you guys prefer that, you can leave us a review. It will really help our podcast. But let's get into the main topic. So this is Mackenzie. And I met Mackenzie because I did a shoot with her. I did her elopement photos, and we just kind of kept in touch ever since. So Mackenzie, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your podcast?
My name is Mackenzie Culver, and I moved to Oceanside in November. So I met Bianca in May when we had to elope. So our wedding
my God, it's been a year.
I know. My podcast is called The Mil Spouse Brief, and it's just about bridging the gap between civilian life and military life. And I have a bunch of civilian and military spouses come on, and we just talk about military life, and it's really awesome, and it's something fun. And Bianca and Crystal were on my podcast last week.
So we actually were on the podcast last week.
Yeah.
Probably like 2 weeks by the time you guys hear this. And honestly, that conversation really is the reason why Mackenzie's here. So we completely deviated from the original subject, which is totally fine. You know, that's how we do here at Messy Buns Coffee Runs.
Okay, so yeah, we ended up getting way off topic. I remember like that episode was like, we recorded almost 2 hours worth of content. Yeah. It was fun though. So, but what, like Bianca said, the reason we had you on today was because you said something, and we're going to start off with that before we get the ball rolling, that literally had, Bianca and I were both holding back tears. I want you to tell them what you had said about, like, what you said about your dad.
Yeah, so if I remember correctly, I was like, my dad is the most perfect human in my eyes.
So for those that, well, you guys just heard in the intro, Crystal is living with us now. So she comes over, we go to Mackenzie's, and we're going to record the podcast, and Mackenzie was like, hey, Crystal, just come on the podcast. Why not? And so we all just started talking about like military life, and it kind of led into a conversation about like parenting, like I think we were talking about like deployment and kids and stuff like that, and we kind of just went from there. We were listening to Mackenzie and the way she was talking about, you know, your parents, and like how you just seemed so confident in like the way your parents raised. What's funny is Crystal you want to tell them about the day, literally was it the day of, actually the night before?
Okay. So actually, I think I kind of touched on this when we were talking. So the night before, but I was like crying to Bianca because I was like, I'm just so scared. Like, am I fucking my kids up? Like, I don't know. Like, I've read the books. I'm constantly trying to learn, but I don't know if I'm doing it right. How does anybody ever know if they're doing it right? If I could just, and I literally said, if I could just talk to somebody who like was parented similar to what I'm trying to achieve, if I could just know that satisfied with their life in some way and like the best way possible, that would be great. And then we show up to your house, and I was like, oh my God, after having this conversation, that's what I took away from going like and talking to you. And that's why I want you to give like a start off by giving like a little background before we get into it.
Yeah, so my parents were raised pretty differently growing up. My dad was born and raised in Utah and then lived on an Indian reservation for a couple years of his life in Arizona. My grandfather taught art and wrestling on an Indian reservation in Arizona, and then they moved back to Utah. And then my mom was raised in Ohio her whole life. And then they met at college at BYU in Provo, Utah. My dad, they met at BYU. Then my dad went to ECU for his master's and then Florida State for his PhD, but did not actually, and I learned this after I told you this, did not actually finish his PhD all the way. So you have like a dissertation at the end.
Yeah, you have to defend it.
Yeah, and something happened between finishing it up and his license transferring to Ohio. And it didn't go through. And so he kind of was like, screw it. I've spent enough time in school. I need to just start working for my family.
I hear going for your doctorate is like some of the most mind-numbing things ever. It's so exhausting that people end up quitting. They're like, I can't take this anymore. It's too much.
So they moved back to Ohio. My dad is the oldest of 7 and my mom's an only child. So very much different kind of like growing up. And I would say specifically my dad, he was like, certain things with the way I was raised, I will not do with my children, and I don't want to replicate that. So like one example was there wasn't a lot of emotion in his house growing up. Right. There wasn't a lot of love. And that was something that he was like, I don't want that with my kids. I want them to know what love is and feel relationships and talk about feelings. And my parents will tell you too, they parented each children differently. And that was a very big thing that they talked about, because as a kid, I would get livid. I'd be like, the way you're doing this with me is not the way you're doing this with my brother. Like, how dare this? And my mom's like, you guys are 2 different people. So like, for example, I am very outgoing. I'm very type A, and that's how my mom is. And so we would butt heads. We would yell, not like screaming, but we'd like yell, and then it'd be fine and it'd be over and we would be good. And it would be like 10 minutes, and it was forgotten about and we went shopping, My brother, you yell at him, shuts down. Right. Cannot, like, is just unresponsive. And so in my house, if I was getting in trouble, and then if I like got in trouble and I didn't like my punishment, I was very loud about it. I was very upset about it. Right. Where my brother, if he got a punishment, in his room, door shut, nothing. And so my parents were really big about and like some things were obviously still the same, but like punishments or the way they responded to us was very much depending on each kid, because each kid was different. So like the ground rules were always the same, but when it came to like either punishments or the way you did a punishment, it had to kind of depend on the kid and how they would respond. Yeah.
See, I love that you say that too, because with my kids, Annabelle is so different than Vivian. Like I cannot, like if I were to yell at Vivian and like, you know what, Vivian, go to your room. That was too much. Vivian would be like, with pleasure, mother. With pleasure. Annabelle would be in tears. She'll feel more. It will get to her more and she'll instantly start apologizing and like, please don't be mad. And like, Annabelle does not do okay with feeling like you're mad at her. That's like if I am mad at her, she'll be like, Mommy, please be happy. And I'm like, well, you have to, you certain things you do make me mad, and certain things you do make me very sad, and it doesn't make me happy. And I'll tell her that, and she'll right away will correct it. I mean, instantly. Vivian, not so much. To be honest with you, she's 3.5 and we still haven't cracked the code with her. I know you mentioned before that, you never really saw your parents fight. I love the fact that you talked about how your parents were a good team, and you told us about one time when you like, I want you to tell a story about how like when you were going to your mom for something and your dad, what did he say to you when you were trying to go behind his back?
Yeah, so my parents were a team, and that was always reiterated growing up, that they're a team, and kind of like 2 parts. So one, if I was be like, Dad, like, come on, just like take my side or say something like that, he'd be like, no, me and your mom are a team. And it was, and as an adult, I respect it so much more, because even if he was like, yeah, I do think that like you should be able to do that, but your mom is my partner and I'm not going to go against it. And if she felt strongly about it and he was kind of like, yeah, it was like they made a team decision. Yeah. And so no matter what, they made a team decision, and they didn't like, my mom wasn't like, I don't know if you've ever seen like, kids will talk about like, well, if I go ask my dad, he'll always say yes, and my mom always say no.
Yeah, we were like that.
It was always making sure both were on the same page. Or if I was like, well, Mom, can I go do this? Well, let me talk to your dad and I'll let you know. I'm like, well, just make the decision. She's like, well, no, I need to talk to your dad. So every decision, even the small ones, specifically the big ones, but even the small ones, they were always on the same page, which then taught me a lot about communication.
Oh, yeah.
That you need to communicate even the small things, because if you don't have it down for the small things, then you're going to forget about it for the big things.
It sets the foundation of like trust and being a team, and not just for you, but for your kids. So they look at you guys like, you probably, especially now, you could see even just being married. And I know you don't have kids yet, but like even just being married and learning these things and picking up these habits early on, how like world of a difference it's going to be. Like
And my dad traveled a lot growing up too. So even if he was gone and like the decision couldn't be made as soon as I wanted it to, well, your dad's gone, so let me wait till I talk to him, or let's wait till he's home. So like even if like my mom, she wasn't obviously a single mom, but like when my dad traveled, even though he was still away, that team didn't change.
Yeah.
So I think that's something kind of like with military as well. I think the fact that they had that foundation, so when my dad did start traveling later on in their marriage, it was already like set. It was already like this thing, and I thought that was really amazing.
I feel like being, like we were saying about being good teammates, it's like making sure to your kids that they know mom and dad, they're a team, and it's an impenetrable wall. Like the kids know, and they'll know by your actions growing up that like, shoot, if they said no, and like, or if one feels really strong about it, there's no changing the minds. Like, and that's one thing I've told Bianca about, how much I want to practice that with my kids, that I need them to understand that when I say something or my husband says something, like that's law. Like we won't change our minds. We made this decision together. Like you were saying about how like if one felt about it, the other one felt more strongly, you went with the more strong one. We talked about this on one of our episodes about how my husband and I do this like 1 to 10 rule essentially. Like if we're like not coming to an agreement on something, like with the kids, for instance, if Ben wanted to go to a party or something and I'm like, I'm okay with it, and he felt a little bit strong about not going, we'd say 1 to 10, how important is this to you? And if it's more important to him, if he says 8 and I say 4, then I'm like, we go with your decision.
Yeah, no, I really like
I'm fine with. You don't realize it, but or like teach him, like you said, like maybe didn't get the answer right away, and like for you, like mom, just make a decision. It's like the point of one, I'm gonna talk to your father because that's consistency, so that teaches you guys consistency, and 2, about like you said, even if he was traveling, you needed to wait until he got an answer. That teaches your kids how to not have instant gratification. And that's so important to like make your kids know that like you need to wait until I'm ready. You know, like sometimes you gotta wait, and you don't always get the decision you want. Okay, so I have a question to ask you. You had mentioned something about like how supported you always felt by your parents.
Yeah, so when I was like little, it kind of was different. So it was kind of like, hey, I didn't like that you did that, but I can't really change it. Or like a big thing in our house growing up was that we all had accountability. We all had the ability to make our own decisions and choose. And so that was like a big thing. But so like the best example that I can think of was when I was marrying my husband. So I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, but my husband was not. And I am going to marry my husband. He's not a member. And in the church, and I think a lot of religions, you stick with your religion. Yeah, totally. You know?
Totally.
And I about rocked my parents' world. And I remember my mom and both my parents really struggled with it because there was so many unknowns, and it was like, well, you don't get X, Y, and Z with this, and you don't get this. And what if you have struggles because you don't see eye to eye on religion? And I think it was a lot of fear of the unknown because we didn't have that same foundation growing up. And for me, and I'm a pretty religious person, I received my answer and I knew that my husband was my husband. And that was who I was supposed to marry. And my parents handled it a little bit differently. My dad was kind of like, okay, well, I can't change her mind. So he had like weekly FaceTimes with Cade to talk about topics about marriage that he wanted Cade to learn.
Yeah.
And then my mom, literally, you can ask her, she gave it to God. She was like, okay, this is yours now.
Yeah, absolutely.
I can't worry about this. And it was kind of like a switch. They were pretty upset about it first. That was pretty hard for them. And Cade decided that he wanted to learn about the church. And I told him that he was open to learn about it, but there was no pressure because I believe that religion is between you and God, and it should not be something that, like, I didn't want him to feel pressured to join the church just to marry me.
Yeah. Oh, and that's so considerate. That's really nice. But that's really mature of you, actually.
Thanks.
That's super mature.
My parents basically flipped a switch, and it was like, he will be our son, he will be accepted. I think at the end of the day, my parents just decided that in order to be the best parents, they had to support me whether they were not exactly happy with my decision.
You know what? I remember you, now you bring that up, I remember you saying something like, your mom saying about like when it comes to her decisions as a mother, that she needs to be able to stand before her God and account for every decision she made as her mother. If I was sent here to be your mother and that's what my assignment was, I hope I did a damn good job. And you know, I think it's amazing, right? Because then he comes to religion about his own terms, and like, you know, it's nothing that was forced. But I love what you're saying about like how you were just supported no matter what. I think about like for instance, I think like I would probably take a similar approach with my kids. I know Bianca feels the same way about really supporting your kids. Unless the decision is direly hurting you, right? Like drugs or alcohol or something like that, then no.
As long as it's not immoral, illegal, or life harming, then
Yeah,
like
exactly.
okay.
It's like, I need like to write like notes or something. And that's exactly what it is. Those are like things that I can't support and I will be very vocal on, but like it does come down to some sort of point where I'm sure your parents understood. And as like, I feel like I would need to understand, it's like your kids make their own decisions. I feel like that's the biggest mentality to break from, is you don't own your kids. Your kids are their own individual people who will make their own individual decisions. You can either hop on board or not. And you don't necessarily have to be thrilled about every single one. And of course you could voice your opinion. Their parents, like they voiced about this, there's a lot of things about marriage that 30 years will teach you that they're trying to like let you know, but you can't really know until you experience it.
I have a question for you, because
Yeah.
we're talking about, you know, getting married young and maybe your parents not exactly wanting this for you, or even maybe even using the word disapproving a little bit. When you told your parents you're getting married, right? And they were like, did they say anything to you right away that made you know that they clearly disapproved?
Yeah, so long story short, and I think the hardest thing from them, which we like in hindsight talked about, was Kate and I said that we were going to break up when he joined the Marine Corps. The whole plan was we
Okay.
got back together and we were going to break up when I went to college and he went to the Marine Corps. And
Just go your separate ways.
yeah. And it was kind of like that made sense. And I think a lot happened that summer that I didn't voice, because at 18, I'm like, I really love this boy and I'm going to marry him. And they're like, and I kept a lot just because I was like, everyone's going to think I'm so stupid.
Yeah, so
like,
maybe they went into it like,
Yeah, so
whoa,
they-
hold on. You literally just said that you guys were going to break up.
Yeah. And it happened pretty quickly just
Yeah.
because it was like, okay, we need to make these decisions.
And then like COVID and deployment happened. You're like, whoa, we've got to figure something out now.
Yeah. So when I knew that they were disapproved, so Kate and I got in a pretty big fight about a month before I was supposed to come out here. The ring was bought, and the whole basis of our thing was we need to work through everything and have many conversations before a ring is put on my finger. My parents are on the West Coast as well, celebrating my dad's 50th birthday, and very little communications happening between the time I fly out there and between the ring is put on my finger. Kate and I are having multiple conversations.
Yeah, those are really hard
conversations. And religious me, I prayed about it and I received my answer. I knew that he was supposed to be my husband. And so we get engaged in La Jolla, and I think it's wonderful. I send all the pictures to my family, and I get like thumbs up and like emojis. Like that's it.
Oh,
And
no.
I was livid. And my parents were like, we didn't even think a ring was going to come back. We thought you were going to come back not engaged. So I'm in we drive back to the hotel, and Kate goes back up to the room, and I'm in the car on the phone with my parents, screaming. And I'm like, I just got engaged and you're not celebrating me. And they're like, we didn't know you were going to get engaged, you know? So, and my parents felt awful.
So
Like,
this was like an instant apology.
I would say like an hour and a half
That's
later.
instant in my world.
Yeah.
Not
and so-
instant for us is like 4 or 5 years, maybe 8 years later.
No, so like it was, I got a text, I am sorry. We
Oh
are
my
so
God, my
excited.
heart.
We love you, yada, yada, yada. And I understand from their position, they were like, and
Well, blindsided almost.
I think that like just because your parents clearly have a good understanding, you have a good relationship with them, but doesn't mean like family conflict is a non-negotiable. It's going to happen. Whether you're raised in the greatest household, whether you're raised in the worst household, it is a non-negotiable. It will happen. But the fact that it's exactly how you handle it. There was clearly like, okay, whoa, lots of high emotions. We're all feeling very crazy. They're feeling like they were completely blindsided. You're feeling like, well, you should know me better. You should know I wouldn't do this without really thinking it through. I would have appreciated it in that moment. You would have been happy for me. But then there's a conversation afterwards. And then it's like, okay, how do we go from here? This brings me to like my next point, what I wanted to talk about, because it kind of wrapping around to like the same thing what we talked about, like the thing that you said, like you speak so highly of your parents, but the thing you said about your dad, like I'm reading his book. It's called How to Raise Emotionally Intelligent Children, which is what your parents were trying to do. That's essentially what it is. Yeah. And a lot of like something that surprised me a lot, because circling back to like what you said about your dad and how much your dad means to you and how much you respect him, how much you love him. And like you said, you used the word perfect. Like he is that person to you. So they had done a ton of research about like families and follow these families from the times that they even before they had kids, when they were just married, all the way to when they had kids, all the way to when the kids got older. And they actually found out so shockingly, above all the research, more than even a mother's influence on a child, it's the father's influence on the child. So actually I wrote it down here because I wanted to read it. So they had found essentially, right, that fathers who are emotionally, they call it coaching, emotionally coaching, when they're trying to teach you to be emotionally intelligent, which basically just honestly, it's a fancy term for teaching your kids about your feelings, how to label their emotions, and then how to deal with it, right?
Yeah.
They found that fathers that were emotionally present for their kids, that talked to the kids, that didn't dismiss their kids' emotions and spoke to them and said, we're going to talk about our feelings, you're going to feel loved here. Those kids not only obviously had better mental health as adults, had better physical health, they scored above and beyond academically as children, and they also showed like huge developmental leaps than their peers. But the biggest thing that they took away from that was that the adults that they turned into, they had such good moral compasses, and they became some of the most resilient people among their peers. Basically, they said that, like, because of this, a dad's influence is actually almost more important than a mom's influence. So much so that if you have a good dad, that your resilience as an adult, you're more likely to be more resilient, like saying such a things like when you get really frustrated, like your boss is really pissing you off. Like, I know before I like sought out therapy and all these other things to figure out what was going on with me, that like my first physical act at wanting to get frustrated or so irritated would be to throw things. But when you learn emotional intelligence as a child, especially from a dad who's so emotionally present, they found that kids were more likely as adults to be so resilient that in high stress situations at adult, whether it was at work, whether it was financial issues, whether it was at like between partners and stuff, they found that those kids were so easily able to almost like regulate themselves, where they'd be like, you know what, I'm so freaking pissed off right now.
Like what you did today.
Yeah, I was just like, you know what, hold on, give me a second. Just give me a second. They're like, all right, I'm going to figure out how to fix, you know what? It's not even that difficult. Let me figure out how to solve this problem. You know what? It's not that bad. Let me just put one thing here at one at a time. You become so resilient that you've like learned to how to manage your emotions and then figure out the problem. So much so that when you have an emotionally present father, like the one you're talking about that you had, it actually, they said, better prepared children for marriage in the real world than any other kids or their peers, because you're able to communicate with your partner. You know what, you're really making me angry, or like with your husband, you really frustrated me that you didn't just do this kind of like the way I would have done it, because I do the same thing where I'm like, well, it frustrates me because it's like there's an easier way to do it, and this is the way I would have done it, not realizing you're your own person. You probably just did it the way you felt like doing it.
Yeah, and then I was like, well, just put your green on. And he's like, I am not walking into a pizza shop with green on green. And like, I was like, I don't think it's a big deal. He like is named, and it was funny because this is what he said. I was like, well, I was walking on my way back from a walk, and I was like, well, I just think it's a stupid decision. And he was like, well, if it's a stupid decision, why did you make me make it? And I said, because you're your own person. He goes, well, then if I'm my own person, you have to accept the fact that I made my own decision.
I will say though, Ethan, like if he doesn't shave, like right now, you know, he's not really like, he's pretty much a bum. He's not working. So like he doesn't shave every day like, you know, normal Marines do. He won't even go to like the PX.
Really?
And it drives me fucking crazy. It's like wear the thing, you know, 'cause you have to wear a face. Wear the one that goes around your head, you know, the gator one, right? Just wear that. No one can tell you have a freaking beard. He won't do it. Like he's the same way. Like if he was in his camis, he 100% would never.
Just put your green on green.
No, he would have done the exact. And it drives me.
No,
nuts.
and I was like, "Are you kidding me? You're gonna drive all the way back." He was at the San Luis Rey Gate, dropping someone off. Took the 76 all the way home, and I was like, "You're gonna go sit in that traffic."
And then now you have to leave again and go off base to get 100%. It's just a cami thing though, so don't hate him too much because he's the exact same way. Because he won't do.
Well, he said it was too embarrassing to show up somewhere in his PT gear, and I was like, "Why?" And he's like, "We live in a military town." And I was like,
"That's exactly why though."
A pizza, no one is going to notice. Everyone's gonna know.
Yeah. I get it because I've heard because we were even on base, right? And this guy was walking across the street right by the McDonald's and the big PX, right? This guy's walking across the street and he has like a Marine Corps like PT stuff on, and he's like, "Wow, I guess he's a Marine." You would never know, but hey, he's a Marine. Like,
oh my gosh, that sounds like Cade. Cade will literally be like, "Oh, look, there's a Marine."
So like, I understand why he wouldn't, because I know Ethan would be like, "Oh, look, there's a Marine. Wow, we've never seen one of those." So I get it.
So in defense of Cade, now we know.
Yeah.
Bianca for the fucking defense. But this is exactly like the point, right? Like this is something like, trust me, and any other marriage is the same way as it is for the dawn of freaking time. It's going to turn into a fight. If for anybody else, it would have turned into a fight, just because now you're annoyed and now you're going to start talking shit about other things, and you're Bianca's.
But with all that being said, my question is now, being the age you are now, having so much life experience under your belt as far as like moving out and being on your own for X amount of time, how was the relationship with your parents now?
So when I lived, I got an apartment, which was like a mile down the street from them
Love
because they
it.
live in the best area. So it was
It's like my dream.
It wasn't even the fact that I was super close to them, but like the location of their house is just. And when I lived there, I would still go over all the time. My dad is my boss, so that did affect it a little bit because I would go over for work a lot. But so we'll just talk about like now in California. I literally talk to my parents every single day.
I love
and
that.
And it's even just like, so
do you call them or they call you?
It's both.
Love it.
I will call them if it's like something like, oh, I need to tell them a story, or if I'm checking in. I talk to my dad a lot about work, but even if it's not about work, I'll just call and talk to him. Like even, I want to say it was like a week and a half ago, I was leaving the grocery store, and normally it's like anywhere from 10 to 15 minutes. And I had like an hour-long conversation with my dad, and it was so cute because he was like, wow, Ken, this is so great. Like, it was just, we just like kept talking and sharing and all this kind of stuff. So we're very close, and they're very supportive of Cade. Cade obviously like talks to them, like Cade's trying to figure out what he wants to do with the Marine Corps, what he wants to do. And I don't know if I said this on this podcast or mine, but my parents were my parents when I was a kid, and now they're my friend.
Oh, love
and
that.
so like, because my parents were like, we will not be your friend. You can go find your friend at school. You can go find your friend at church. You can go find your friend in the neighborhood. We are not your friends. But now I feel like a friendship with them. So I'll call them. And like one day I got really mad at Kate, and I was like, I need to talk to someone or I'm going to blow up. And then my dad was like, well, have you seen it from like this perspective? And my mom's like, okay, but like think about it from this, you know? And so like I'm able to like talk to them about that.
They're fair.
I love how they truly just care so much about what's going on in your life. Like, and
then,
even like just hearing how I think the biggest thing that like I'm taking away from all of this, minus like, you know, the textbook things that they've done that we've read. The biggest thing to me that I totally want to incorporate in my kid's life is, although I may disagree with a decision, I'm going to do whatever I can to support you in that decision and set you up for that decision. Like, I feel like it leaves the line of communication so open, because I know if you felt like
if it closes,
because like if you felt like they truly just disapproved of you and Kay, like, and if you guys get into a fight, you're going to be like, I'm not going to tell them, because they're going to be like, I told you so. Like, you don't want to hear that. And like, you're going to be like, I don't want to feel like they were right or whatever. Yeah. Like, I love that they were able to just make you feel so comfortable with them that you were able to be like, you know what? Like, hey, me and Cade just got in this argument. I need your perspective. And they were able to be like, you know what? Maybe you should try seeing it from his point of view. I love that, because at the end of the day, I feel like their best interest is always what's best for you.
Yeah. And I think, and it's small things like my parents are very like, they're like, oh, social media, like, why is your generation into this? But my dad, on that hour-long phone call we had a couple of weeks ago, he was like, I was talking about Instagram, and I think maybe it was the podcast Instagram, because every week he listens to my podcast and then sends me a tip, like a text about critiques or his thoughts, like, and he'll be the first to be like, oh, that wasn't your best, or like,
oh, I love that.
Or he'll be like, I think you should do this, or this was really good, you know, like every week I get a text from him and my mom. She normally calls me to tell me, but we were talking about the podcast, and he was like, I don't know, have I ever seen what they look like? And I was like, well, I make a post, and then I was like, oh, but you're not on Instagram. And he's like, well, should I get an Instagram?
Oh my God.
I was like, well, like me and Tanner and Cade and Ren, like, we all post on it. Like, we are, like, that's probably, and I post on Facebook maybe like once a week or once every 3 weeks. Like, I'm not as much of a Facebook poster, more like big life events or things like that, where stories on Instagram are just so easy. Yeah. And so I'm explaining this to my dad, and he's like, well, I am a very visual guy. You know what? I'll make one tonight.
Oh,
and
my
then
God.
all of a sudden I get like a notification that like, it was like DJK14, you know, followed you. And so I was like, oh, so you made it. And so he's super cute, because he'll like,
oh my God, like all your photos
now.
Yeah.
And things like that. And it's things like that where he's not going to become some social media influencer. Yeah. But it was like a way to connect with your kid. Yeah. That he probably is like, okay, I'm in Instagram. But for me, I was like, oh, then he'll follow me and he'll like see my life a little bit more, where like, he won't always see that unless I like would call and tell him about it.
I love it. So we are so grateful that you came on our show.
Thank you for having me.
And I am so happy that we got to get your perspective on things.
It felt nice to be able to dive deep into like what you had to think. And admit, you know what? Like, you have no idea, but you really brought a lot of comfort to me and Bianca, especially after going to your house. We were just so thankful that we had met you and like got to have that conversation. And it kind of just solidified that, like, regardless of the outcome, we're going to go with our guts and we're going to go with what we believe is right.
Great.
Oh, thank you. You're going to make me cry. All right. So we're going to wrap this up, everybody. Thank you again so much for coming on, and we'll see you guys again. I hope you guys made it this far. Hopefully the editing's not too bad.
I am so excited that we had a guest on finally.
I know. You know what? She's such a sweetheart.
She is.
She's such a nice girl.
I know. It was so much fun. And I hope you guys...
It was nice to talk to somebody and get the perspective on something that I know kind of gave you and I both anxiety a little bit there. And now it's like... You know what? It is what it is. We parent how we parent. We'll figure it out along the way. Not everyone is perfect.
Yeah.
You know, there is really no blueprint, but it's nice to know that there are people out there. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Because I feel like when you are, like we said, when you're changing up your parenting style, it can be scary because it's not something that we really know. We don't know anybody like that we're close to that was parented the way we're kind of parenting our kids.
Yeah.
So we don't really know the outcome of what it would be. We just have an idea and like the science and stuff, and psychology and research to kind of like back up what we think will happen, but we really don't know. So it's really nice to see her come in and kind of talk about her experience from like the child's perspective and being raised the way we kind of want to raise our kids.
Yeah,
so
totally.
I love that we did that. So Crystal, now that we have wrapped up our main topic, we've talked a little bit with Mackenzie. We gave you guys a little bit of life update, but we left out one huge life update,
the biggest life
that we
update.
wanted to save for the very end of this episode. So Crystal, what happened this week with, you know, your family that was so significant and probably one of the biggest things you guys, besides your children, have been through as a married couple?
Well, on Thursday, my husband finally became a U.S. citizen.
Dude.
He's 31 years old, and it finally freaking
Insane.
happened. I wish you guys could have been there. You know, with the COVID stuff, it sucks that no one else could go. But like, I really wish you guys would have been there to be able to see his reaction, like, especially afterwards and getting the paper that shows, because, you know, you get the certificate. Mm-hmm. Oh my God. He was just, he had to catch his breath. It was amazing. It was so amazing. It's been a long freaking journey, man.
Yeah. So you guys got married. Okay. So you guys got legally married in December 2016.
2015. Yeah.
You guys got legally married December 2015 and you guys started the process right away, right?
Yeah.
And then from there, since December 2015, what are we in 2021? So almost 5.5, 6 years.
Almost freaking 6 years.
From beginning to end, from going from being, what did he start off with? He's just start off with the DACA program.
DACA. So just to give a little bit of background.
Yeah, give everyone a background.
It warrants, like, I'm probably going to toot my husband's horn a little bit.
You
here,
absolutely need to.
He totally, I've never met a more deserving person of it. He came in with, he's got there's 5 of them, right? So he's the oldest of 5. There's got 4 brothers and 1 sister. But at the time that they came from Mexico, he was born in Guadalajara. And Guadalajara. And at that time when they came to the US, he was 9 years old, and it was just him, and there was 4 kids. 4 kids that came because Angel was born here. They come, I mean, this kid doesn't know the language, his mom doesn't know, no one knows the language. They're just in this foreign land trying to make it work. He's gone from living in literal trailer parks, living in someone's back house, like all 5 of the siblings plus the mom, like living in someone's garage at one point. Just trying to make it fucking work. My husband's always held down a job. He's always had a job to help his mom with the bills. He's really fought his way to be able to hold his place here, I feel like.
Yeah.
So when I met him, which is really funny, right? Interesting enough, he had gotten the DACA. Now, mind you, when we met, he was 25, I was 24.
When did he get the DACA?
He got the DACA we met in 2015, so he got it in 2014.
Wow, so he had just gotten it.
He had just gotten a driver's license, which is insane because he was 25 at the time. And I remember something so funny. He thought, because we didn't know each other like that, he thought for whatever reason I had my like life together or something.
Oh my God.
Which
Little
is why
did he know.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, which is kind of like the reason why he told me he would like never slide in my DMs, is because he's like, you have your life together. I have no freaking papers. There's no way you would date me.
Gosh.
Yeah, I know. And then he was 25 and he was in nursing school, and I remember him always kind of feeling like he needed to overcompensate for the fact that he felt like he was so far behind, because by this point, right, like anybody who knows, he went to Whitney High School. So a lot of his classmates are like doctors, lawyers, engineers, like went to top universities all around the nation and stuff. So he was 25 and still still at community college trying to get his nursing license or whatever. So I remember him the first night that he told me, we were only on our third or fourth date. He was so fucking nervous to tell me.
Really? I did not know this.
So on our
wait, I didn't realize this was something that like he needed to like plan to tell you.
Oh, okay.
I thought this was something you already knew.
No.
Like you just, it was like common knowledge.
Crazy about this is his
Wow, I
friend
didn't know
group.
that.
He has this friend group that he's been friends with since high school. No, not even then, since like 7th grade, because Whitney starts in 7th grade. Actually, the whole friend group that he had, he's been friends with them since 7th grade at least. Oh, excuse me. None of them knew. He actually only had told his friends, like his circle of friends, other than his two like best friends. He had only told his immediate circle the year before we met that he didn't have any papers. He was very, very, very private about it. Which is like, I know that he, like, I've talked to him about this. Like, he's okay with me telling you this, but he was extremely private about it. It's something he was almost like kind of embarrassed about.
Yeah, ashamed of. Which you shouldn't be.
Yeah, exactly. Which is like my standpoint is, I'm like, why would you be ashamed? That's the last thing to be ashamed of.
But I guess like when you're, I mean, I don't want to speak for him at all, but from what I've gotten from other people and, you know, from what I've seen on social media, I've seen people feel really ashamed about it because it doesn't look great in society, you know, being here without your papers or anything.
Exactly.
So I can see why, even though I feel like people really miss like the greater point of it all.
Oh, exactly. Oh, I see what you're saying. Like,
yeah.
For some people, they feel very strongly about you stand on either side of the immigration policy.
Exactly.
So you got to be careful who you tell, right? Especially in these times.
Yeah,
So
exactly. You have to be really careful with who you tell.
He was, I remember we were like on our third or fourth date or whatever, and we were like up late just talking and hanging out. And we were like, I don't know, we were having a great conversation. And I asked him about his childhood because I'm very generally curious to the people that I meet. I'm always so curious about their childhoods.
Yeah.
So I asked him, and then that's when he finally decided. He was like, took a really deep breath, and he was so nervous. He actually
How did he say it?
He had to pull away from me because actually he goes, you know, I was born in Mexico, and I was just, because I asked him where he grew up, because I knew when I had met him, he was living in an apartment with 6 people in a 2-bedroom apartment. So I was like, oh, where you guys originally from? Because I knew he wasn't from Staten.
Yeah.
I knew he was from the Hawaiian Gardens area, but I wanted to know, did you grow up there? Like, what was your story?
Born and raised? Yeah.
Exactly. I had just finished telling him I was born at Long Beach Community Hospital, you know, like, and that's when he took a really deep breath. He pulled away from me. Actually, he was so fucking nervous. He was actually telling me he was like actually prepared for me to be a little upset and like call the date off and then like leave.
Ew, really?
Yeah, exactly. So he stood up
gosh.
and then he like told me, he's like, you know, actually I was born in Mexico. And you know what my first reaction was? He talks about it to this day. My first thing was like, oh my God, that was so cool. What was it like growing up there? And I remember him being stunned. Now in retrospect, I understand why he was stunned. But at the time I was just like,
well, I think because our parents are both
immigrants, and it's not something that like I just don't feel like people should be ashamed of it.
Yeah,
like,
and for us it never really, I guess, mattered, and it wasn't a huge, I know for some people it might, and we were really lucky that it didn't, but I think we grew up and it was so normal for all of our family and our own parents to be.
Exactly.
So it's just like, oh, cool, yeah, like, yeah, tell me more about it. Like, where in Mexico?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I love, and I even then like love listening to the memories he has of like where he grew up and stuff.
Yeah, because he's 9. I think about it now, and Annabelle's 5, and she already can remember things from like even a year ago. And I'm like, damn. So if he was there since he was 9. Imagine like all that he probably remembers.
Yeah, because he came here
from there
when he's halfway through 3rd grade. So he went to school over there. You know, he had his whole life over there. I love hearing about it. I'm always talking about it with him. And I told him, and he was just like, asked me how I felt about it. I told him, I was like, I literally said, I think my exact words were, I think it's the coolest thing in the world. Tell me more. Like, I want to know everything. I think it's amazing. It's nothing to be ashamed of. And that's when we went on to have a deeper conversation about how he was ashamed of it. And the big thing, I don't think he was so much ashamed of it as not just having papers, is because not having papers and not having a social really held him back with a lot of things, like being able to finish school on time with his peers, or get him, stop him from getting a good job, even having a driver's license. So when DACA came around, it was like heaven sent. And then, so when we got engaged, it was like, let's get married. Let's start this process now, like right away. We start this process. We'll get it going. Wow. We'll have time to plan the wedding. It's like, Never, not once did I ever flinch at the idea. I've never given a second thought.
And you
I was
never
never
were
even
like,
nervous.
maybe he's just marrying me for this. Like, you could tell,
was
like, everyone
never
who
a
was
thought.
around you guys knew that there was no way that that was the case.
Exactly. Like, there was never any second thoughts of like,
Yeah,
oh, he's marrying me
absolutely.
because now, oh, like this is the motive. Like, it was nothing like that. I think if anything, he went overdrive to prove that it was nothing like that. I mean, for Christ's sake, he was 25 years old. Like, he's gone this long without papers. He could have married somebody a long time ago for it. So, so we put in right away. We got married the month after we got engaged, and then we were planning the wedding, which was really exciting. I was really excited that we got married first.
So, sorry, I want a like detailed explanation just so you remember this in the future too.
Yeah, totally.
So you guys got married December what again?
23rd.
23rd. When did you guys go meet with the
2015.
lawyer for the first time?
No. We got married December 22nd, 2015. We met with the Lord December 23rd.
Wow.
We went the very
y'all
next
meant
day.
business.
Yeah. We were like, we need to put in papers. We need to put in papers now. Like,
Yeah.
we want to get this process started. We went the very next day. We got the lawyer. We told him what we needed to do. And he explained to us what we needed to do on our end. The good thing about it was, like, he said, like, because of the fact that he was in nursing school, and by that point he would have already been graduated and
Yeah.
stuff. He's like, if it's not going to be a problem for anybody, it shouldn't be a problem for you. But the process is still the process.
Yeah, of
and
course.
sure enough, I mean, it just took so long. And so after we purchased our first home in 2017, he got his RN license, he got his big boy job, we purchased our first house, and then that same year he got his green card, which was so exciting for us.
Huge deal.
Yeah, because that honestly too is one of the factors of us like waiting to have kids too.
Yeah.
Is he wanted to have some sort of like solidarity that he was here. Because then we got pregnant with Ben. He got his green card in September 2017. We got pregnant with Ben in December 2017.
Oh, wow. So it was almost 2 years from starting the process that he got his green card.
Exactly.
Wow.
It takes time.
I mean, time flies by, right? So for me, it felt like it was only maybe 2 years total.
Yeah,
like, it doesn't
but
feel
it's
like
been
long
this
at all.
long
But damn,
fucking process. Like, yeah, it like seems like it goes by fast, but even from the time you get the green card, once you get your residency card, you still have to wait 3 years before you can get your citizenship, which
Yeah.
is why the process takes so long. So he applied for his citizenship, and we right away put in for those papers. But then COVID hit, so like everything was so back ordered and back processed. Like
oh my
the process,
God, I can imagine.
we're a year late on the process because of COVID. Because technically you can apply. We were able to apply May 2020,
It just
but
took longer to
it
process.
just took so long. We didn't even hear back. We applied May 2020. We didn't even hear back until March 2021.
Yeah.
Because then once we got the paper in March, everything went like that.
Yeah.
And then he went for his interview and he passed the test, and then they sent him a date for his oath, and now
was
he's a
it.
U.S. citizen. And like, I will never understand that, because obviously I was born here in the U.S., so I don't think I'll ever understand like. I can understand the gravity of the situation, but I can't really comprehend. I can't really understand until I've been the one like constantly
you're
looking
in
over
those
my shoulder,
shoes.
wondering like. I remember him telling me when we were actually coming back, when we were going back to my mother-in-law's house after the oath ceremony, he was making jokes. He was like, laughing.
Oh my
we were
God, of
cracking up.
course. And if you guys don't follow Crystal or myself on Instagram, you guys really missed out on Julio's outfit. He was legit
party.
wearing a mullet to his little celebration party.
A freaking
That
beer
was
belt,
the best thing I've ever
a
seen.
USA
in my entire life.
hat. That was fucking awesome, man.
It was.
But he was telling me, he's just like all these things. And you know what? The other thing is too, like he has 2 last names, and we have chosen, because he has his dad's last name like they do in Mexico and your mom's last name. We've always known that we wanted to take on only his mom's last name, but
Yeah.
because of legal paperwork and stuff like that, I had to take on both his last names. Julio feels very strongly about dropping his dad's last name. For him, is just, his dad didn't really play a part in his
Yeah.
life, and his mom is the one that brought them to this country and worked her ass off to support her 5
Sacrificed
kids.
so
So
much.
he knew that he only wanted to have the Montano last name. So we only actually gave our kids Montano. Our kids are not Gonzalez Montano. So
yeah. You
Yeah.
were telling
So
me
they're only Montano. So,
So, like, you guys don't even have the same
the
last
pressure
name.
is right. Yeah, exactly. So I didn't know this, but I guess when you become a citizen, you're allowed to change your name to whatever you want it to be. Actually,
Yeah,
you can
it's like a new
completely
start.
Yeah, it's a new start. And like,
Should've
there's this
changed his
paper.
first name to July.
Julian, you're not Julio anymore. So sure enough, like he has his like first last name, and then his first and middle name, and then his last name is only Montano. There's no longer Gonzalez. So him and I have to start the process of changing our last names.
Okay, so it's not officially done yet, though.
Yeah, it's
He just has
just
that
official on the
paperwork giving him
certificate.
okay to.
Yeah, exactly. But he's dropped his dad's last name. Now you know what was weird for me? Like we've always been Montano. I've always only gone by the last name
Yeah.
Montano, but it's always like, I told him, it's like, it just almost feels like we're a new family. Like, I don't know how to explain it. Like
No, I can only imagine.
seeing that last name on that piece of paper and it's only Montano, it's like there's no need to explain. Like when I would go to the doctor's office and they couldn't find my file, I'd be like, oh, check under Gonzalez.
Yeah.
And they would almost always file it under Gonzalez.
Oh my God.
And I would have to say,
Gonzalez.
hey, like I go under Montano, don't file it under this.
Yeah.
But legally it's Gonzalez Montano. And they always use the first last
Yeah.
name. So I don't know. I was like, I feel like we're a different family. And for him, he was expressing to me about like how, you know, you gain all this knowledge from like situations you're in. Like, for instance, like he's like, I could tell you what police lights look like from like 5-6 rows back.
Oh my gosh.
He's like having to make sure that I was driving at the speed, making sure I was behaved, or even like he was crying. I mean, I'm going to just expose him like that. He was crying, and like we had this conversation about how like when he was 21, right? He didn't have an ID. He had a Mexican passport and that was it. And how he didn't really want to like go out and like, you know, when you're 21, you go out to bars with your friends and like all you want to do is for people to card you. And he's like, he would be so embarrassed. He's like, I wouldn't even want to go out. And there were plenty of times where I just said no because I was so scared that the person at the door wouldn't accept my Mexican ID because the only thing he had was a Mexican ID. He goes, and it's embarrassing. Like all your friends are showing your ID. You're the last one. They're like, we can't let this guy in. And he's like, you guys go ahead. I'll just go home. Like all these little things that I didn't know really like, you know, that these things that you have to deal with when you don't, when you're born a U.S. citizen.
All these insecurities
yeah,
that
all
he had
these insecurities
that
are done.
Like you never even had to think about being an American citizen.
Yeah, absolutely.
You never had to think about these things.
Absolutely.
And that you don't even realize things like going to a bar and showing your ID, like how it's okay. You know what kind of reminds me of? Like someone who has a major anxiety, right? You look at them and you're like, what, you're anxious about that? Like you're anxious about going to the bathroom by yourself in a restaurant?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Things like that. You're like, why does that matter? But for that person, like it's like a big deal. That's what it was for him. He had a lot of those little insecurities and anxieties surrounding
many
it.
of them. He's like, that's the reason, you know, he had never been to Vegas until his bachelor party because he's like, I couldn't fucking go. They wouldn't accept my ID. Told him, I was crying to him. I was like, I know this sounds traumatic. I know it does. But it is a reality that in the back of my mind, I would worry about is every time it took longer, the process took longer. And then we had a child and we had our second child and it like COVID hit and I was like, fuck, we can't apply for your citizenship. Like it's going to take that much longer. I know this sounds ridiculous, but I always like had that fear in the back of my mind of like, I know he has his green card, but what if this new law comes into effect that no one can apply to be a citizen and now the green cards are revoked and now you have to go back to your country.
I mean,
what the fuck do we do as a family? Like
talking about uprooting the kids'
and
lives
we've
starting
talked
in a
about
new
that.
country, and it's like,
we've had to
and
talk about that.
And rightfully so. I hope so because those are, while very unlikely, that's the word I was looking for. While super unlikely, it's not impossible. And these are things like, I think in any marriage too, right? Like you have these situations that are probably not going to happen. Yeah. But it's good to be prepared just in case.
And especially with someone with a lot of anxiety, I feel better when I have even plan Z. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
But overall,
well, now that's completely off the table.
Exactly. And like now we're free to live our, I mean, we were always free to live our lives, but now
It's
we're really
just
free to live
different.
our lives.
It's a different type of freedom.
And it is not just like, for me, it's like more of a sigh of relief. And I'm so happy for my husband, but I can see my husband. It's like, he's like a different man, honestly. And this is such a big deal for his family as well. Like,
oh my God, yes.
This is like what he came here for. This is what his family came here for. And this is what they sacrificed for. And like
his mom. Yeah.
And now I know he feels complete. So he got his citizenship and now you guys missed one hell of a get together. Let me tell you.
So we are actually going to post a photo on our Instagram tomorrow morning.
That's, you know what? That's exactly what we're going to do.
That is going to be, look for that picture on our Instagram. If you want to see a picture of Julio in his mullet, just celebrating being an American citizen, you cannot miss that. I am so damn happy for your family and for Julio. And it just literally brought legit like tears all day to my eyes, seeing the video of him swearing in and seeing the post you posted on Facebook. And I just feel like weight lifted off everyone's shoulders and like hard work finally paying off.
Huge milestone
And I hate to say it, but like while I'm super excited for Julio, I think I'm more excited for his mom. Like I can only imagine the feeling she must feel knowing that like, you know, she sacrificed so much. And if you knew her story a little bit more, you would understand it. But just like all that she really sacrificed and did to give him this now and to like get him to this point. Like while, you know, I mean, I don't know. It's just it's
a freaking beautiful thing, man. She got a different sense of fulfillment that day. That's for sure.
Like,
that is for sure.
I love it. Well, I'm so happy for you guys.
Look out for the mullet picture.
Look out for the mullet picture. It'll be on our Instagram right now. Now that you're listening to this episode, it will be posted.
If you made it this far, comment Merca.
For real. Yes, please. I love that. Thank you guys so much for being so patient with us while we took a little hiatus so that we can kind of get our life back together. And thank you guys so much for listening to this episode of Messy Buns
Coffee Runs.
We will see you guys next week where we talk all things
hypothetical divorce.
I know it sounds crazy, but tune in.
This is gonna be fun. You guys will want to listen to this.
All right, guys, we love you, and we'll see you
Bye,
guys next week.
Felicia. Peace.